All right, let's talk Miami Dolphins. This is obviously a team in transition. Greer is gone. Mike McDaniel, if we're being honest, is most likely on his way out after the end of the season. But the Miami Dolphins have recently made a couple moves really, that really indicate exactly what their strategy is. And I think it's actually going to have a massive impact on what they do going forward. We'll break all that down in just a second. It's kind of sliding under the radar, but I think it's important. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Miami Dolphins coming into the trade deadline, everyone expected them to be massive sellers, right? They were going to sell everybody. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Jordan Brooks maybe was going to be available. Jalen Waddle was the name being thrown around, right? Everybody was potentially a target for the Dolphins to sell, to move off of, to acquire a lot of draft picks, to set themselves up for the future, right? That's what the Jets were doing. That's what the Jets did. A lot of people thought that's what the Dolphins were going to do, but they didn't. And I think it was actually a critical move because, look, we know the Dolphins, in terms of their biggest priority once the season ends for them, will be finding their next GM and next head coach, right? That's the most important thing for them. Mike McDaniel is gone. Kelly will be an interim guy. He is an interim guy, not the long-term guy. So they want to find the next GM and the next head coach. And they want to create an environment and atmosphere to attract the right GM and the right coach. They don't want some desperate guy. Don't want some guy looking for an opportunity. They want the best of the best to come to Miami, and that's why they've made some of these moves. So without further ado, I want to pull up this article from ESPN kind of highlighting what happened at the trade deadline. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty here and the nuts and bolts on the other side. Again, from the ESPN report, despite being seen as likely to be active moving players ahead of Tuesday's trade deadline, the Dolphins only made one move, trading outside linebacker Jalen Phillips to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 2026 third-round pick. Ultimately, McDaniel said the team didn't feel compelled to make any moves in light of its 2-7 start to the season. All deals are not close to me until they're done, so I have a weird way of looking at it, McDaniel said. But yeah, there wasn't anything that moved the needle for us to change our roster beyond what we've done. So that's important there. Again, so Mike McDaniel's saying, listen, I'm not going to hear about a deal until it's been very far along. So Mike McDaniel's basically saying, I'm out of the fray here. I'm not in the weeds. I'm not making these calls. The only time I hear about a deal is when it's this close to getting pulled off. So he's just saying clearly people didn't think it was the right move to trade some of these assets. The report goes on to say Miami parted ways with longtime general manager Chris Greer last week, promoting Champ Kelly on an interim basis with 4 days to spare before the trade deadline. The belief, sources from multiple teams told ESPN, was that the Dolphins would be open to trading most of the players on the roster, at least more so than they were under Greer, who thought Miami could still turn its season around. Again, like I said, a lot of people expected Kelly to be a guy to trade a bunch of assets to try and accumulate draft picks, but of course did not happen. The report goes on to say ESPN senior writers Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler, two great reporters, reported the Dolphins received calls about wide receiver Jalen Waddle and linebacker Bradley Chubb, but the team rebuffed offers for both players. A source told Graziano Miami wanted at least the first-round pick for Waddle, who signed a 3-year, $84.75 million extension in 2024. While Kelly has the interim GM title, McDaniel said there was a cohesive process with team owner Stephen Ross to determine the franchise direction for the next few months. Of course, McDaniel is going to say this. It was a collaboration of myself, Champ, and Dolphins Senior Vice President of Football and Business Administration, Brandon Shore, and utilizing all the mindset we have within the organization, but communicating with our ownership directly. McDaniel said, we had very, very healthy conversations, and we're all in agreement for the moves we made and or moves we didn't make. It was a normal trade deadline process where you are, contrary to popular belief, you generally talk about a ton. There's conversations all over the place with every team because everyone's trying to get better and seeing what competitive advantage they can get. I'm happy with the preparation portion of this morning for the Buffalo Bills. So I think this is really important to understand here in the context, right? This detailed reporting really gets into the weeds. The Mike McDaniel quotes I take with a big honking grain of salt because we all understand he's 99.999% chance, barring a crazy finish to the season, he's on his way out of town. He came in with a lot of good things, started off strong, certainly faded over the past couple seasons. But the reality is the Dolphins, their primary goal, like I mentioned, is to find their next GM, is to find their next head coach and create the right environment. And despite what people want to tell you and the talking heads on ESPN and Fox Sports and all that, having a lot of draft picks isn't necessarily a thing that attracts the top head coach, the top general manager. They want good players, right? It's one thing to trade, a player who's worth a third-round pick for a second-round pick. That's good. That's creating value. That's awesome. Jalen Waddle is a star. Just because you would get, say, a second and a fourth from him from like the Giants or something doesn't mean you should trade him. Of course not. He's a good player. Bradley Chubb is still a good football player. I think that's obvious. Should you just give them away just because you want to accumulate draft picks just to make the talking heads over at, First Take on ESPN make them happy and say, oh, it's good job, Miami, the way they're talking about the Jets? Guys, I think what the Jets did is it was stupid. It was foolish. They traded away all pros, Pro Bowl players, star players to get draft picks. Why? Listen, draft picks they're a chance to get good later. The Dolphins have had a lot of draft picks, remember? How did all those work out? Some hits, some misses, as is with any team. The reality is the way you win the NFL, the formula for success is pretty simple. Have more good players than the other guy, right? That's just a fact. The Dolphins don't have a lot of good players, but they certainly do have some. Chubb is one of them. Certainly Jalen Waddle is another. You do not trade away good players if you're trying to attract top GM talent, top head coaching talent. If you're the number one general manager candidate in 2026 after the season, do you want to go to Miami if all they have is a couple first-round picks, a couple second-round picks, and say, hey, you got a lot of draft picks here? No, of course not. But if you want to go to Miami, if you're a GM, you're thinking, listen, I can hire a great offensive coach who wants to do something with Jalen Waddle. And listen, we got some good players. We still got Bradley Chubb, got a young tackle in Patrick Paul that I really like, a center in Brewer. We got some players, right? We're a long way to go, but I think I can go there and make a difference, and I can find the right coach to use Waddle better, right? You can sell top GM candidates, you can sell top front office guys, and then later top coaching candidates on a roster that has good players. A great example, if you look at head coaching searches across the National Football League last year, the belle of the ball, who's the guy I really wanted? Ben Johnson, offensive winter kid from the Detroit Lions. Why did he go to the Bears? Because the Bears already had a lot of talent, right? They already had a lot of good players. They already had a lot of big name players. It wasn't because they had a lot of cap space. It wasn't because they had an incredible amount of draft picks. They had some cap space, and they had a normal amount of draft picks, but they didn't have like an ungodly amount. Right? Ben Johnson, top head coaching candidate, wanted to go to the Bears because they had good players. Good players attract good GMs and good coaches, and that cycle feeds off of itself. That's why hiring the right GM and hiring the right coach is so important. If you don't bring in those right guys with good players, they don't attract more good players that attract good coaches, and so on and so forth. Right? It's a chicken and egg thing, but it's a vicious cycle. You have good players. Don't trade them away. Credit the Dolphins for not giving away the game here. A lot of people were expecting them to. I think they made the right move, and I think it will pay big dividends for them. I truly believe this when they look to go out and find their long-term GM and long-term head coach. And one of the reasons I think you can tell that this is part of the Dolphins' strategy from a leadership perspective, and I really think it was, obviously, they didn't trade these guys. They got offers. They could have. It was because they understood that Kelly, their interim GM, is their interim guy. He's just basically managing the office, for lack of a better word. That's a super simple way of doing it. I'm not trying to demean him, but that's just the reality. This is who he is, right? Let me pull up sort of his resume on the screen right now. Right, this is his sort of operations career. You can see he was the Las Vegas Raiders interim GM about two-thirds of the way down there from 2023 to 2024. Actually held the title twice. Twice he held the title when they fired Ziegler, and then later when they fired Tom Telesco. He actually took over as the interim GM on both occasions, right? He's done it a bunch. This is who he is. And now he's doing it with the Miami Dolphins. Neither of those two occasions where he was the interim GM prior, he was never a serious candidate to ever become the full-time non-interim GM. And neither is that the case here with Miami. He's not going to be the full-time GM. He is a guy, just like you see this in corporate America, when the CEO gets fired, when the CEO gets indicted, he's the guy you call in to kind of just manage the sort of rebuild, the tear down and rebuild. And he's really good at it, undeniably so. He's proven himself to be very good at it. But what he's done, his job is to make sure the roster stays in such a way to attract the next GM, to attract the next head coach. That's exactly what he's done twice before, and that's what he's doing right now with the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins, to their credit, are sticking with that approach. It's the same reason, by the way, they haven't fired Mike McDaniel. A lot of people said, why would you fire Chris Greer and not McDaniel? The answer is easy. Top head coaching candidates, they don't like going places where coaches don't get a lot of leeway, that get fired mid-season. Right? You usually, when that happens, it's a big red flag. In fact, there are reports that talk about Ben Johnson that the big reservation that Johnson had about the Bears was organizational stability. Like he said, listen, they fired their head coach in the middle of the season last year after 2.5 seasons. What's my leash going to be like? That almost cost Ben Johnson going to the Chicago Bears. So again, that matters. These things, these little things that people in the media and fans that don't really think about, it really matters. Top coaching candidates, top GM candidates too, if we're being honest, it helps them knowing that they're going to hire those top coaching candidates if the number one coaching guys are going to go to a program that's going to give them a lot of leeway, a lot of leash. They won't fire them 8, 7, 6, 9 games into a season. These little things matter, guys. And now I know a lot of Dolphins fans out there are upset, rightly so. 100% deserved, you should be. But the reality is the Dolphins are making the key moves right now to find the next critical hires, whether it's the GM or the coach, or in my opinion, both. And they're doing everything right on that front so far. Long way to go, but we're going to give some Dolphins some credit here for finally making some good moves. All right, we got more to break down here, but first, Dolphins fans, in the comment section below, real quick, want to hear from you guys. Who do you want to be the next head coach of Miami, right? You could pick anybody, right? Within reason, of course, but but who could you realistically want to be the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins? Put them in the comment section below. Want to hear from you guys. But let's look at the Dolphins in terms of their cap situation and where they sit right here. And this is sort of the one thing that's hanging over the franchise right now. And you can see their cap space for 2026 on the screen in front of you. Right now, they're set up to have some of the not good cap situation. You can see they're over the cap, both in raw numbers and effective cap space there. The Dolphins in the middle of the screen. Only the Browns, Saints, Cowboys, Vikings, and Chiefs are set to have a worse situation to start the 2026 offseason. But here's the thing. It's actually not as bad as it looks. You can see that number right there. Their cap space, the way it currently sits, they're $12 million over the cap. That's the key number. The way it's currently situated for 2026. But if I look at the roster and I just pulled up some of their top cap hits, again, the way it's slated for 2026, and if it's a lot of veterans there, of course, and you can see just by cutting some guys, and there's obviously some restructures, you can see right there that they have just rough numbers here, 56, 64, 75, 82, 97. They have 104, up to $104 million of cap space they can create, right? Now, there's some dead money there that would suck, but the reality is they've got a lot of options in front of them. The key thing for the Miami Dolphins was not going to be getting that cap number down. They have a chance to do that. The key thing was to get the right GM and let him have the opportunity, after hiring the right coach and working with him, to figure out who they wanted to cut, who they wanted to trade. Doing it now just to accumulate draft picks, just degrading your talent base, would have obviously detracted GMs and coaches, but it would have also taken a potential tool out of their tool belt. You want to hire the next GM and head coach to know how to evaluate talent, to make the decision who to cut, who to trade. Listen, nothing against Kelly, nothing against him at all. But the reality is, if he was the best man to make this decision, he would have already had the title, for being totally honest, right? And that's why the Dolphins are smart. And he understands this too. He's not an idiot. The Dolphins are smart to say, listen, I know Dolphins smart. That sounds crazy, but trust me, in this case, they are. They understood that, listen, we need to make sure the guy who makes this decision of who to keep and who to let go, that needs to be the next GM and next head coach. We can't make that decision now. Credit to the Dolphins for getting this right. Everyone in the media got this wrong. The Dolphins got it right. If they can get the right GM, if they can get the right head coach, and they're setting themselves up to be in a good position to do so, I think they'll be well situated to rely on those two key guys to turn this franchise around. Will it work? Time will tell. But at least for the first time in a long time, I think we can say the Dolphins leadership is actually making the right moves.